In the 17th century, a third of Dutch sailors who enlisted with the VOC never returned home. Many of their bodies were claimed by distant seas or buried in unmarked graves on foreign lands. Starvation, disease, and accidents claimed more lives than all naval battles combined. Yet, men still continued to enlist. By the way, subscribe if you want to hear more like this. Also, where are you tuning in from? And what's the time over there? Someone from Amsterdam told me they listen at 4 a.m. I can't tell if that's before sleeping or just insanely early. Anyway, we're heading to the Dutch Republic in 1655. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, grab some pillows, fix your blanket, settle in. You'll want to. The chill of dawn stings your skin as you wake in a small farming village north of Rotterdam. Faint light filters through the lone, tiny window of your family's farmhouse. You shift on the straw mattress, its brittle crackle stirring up dust. Unlike your soft bed right now, comfort here doesn't exist, just a thin wool blanket that hardly keeps away the cold. Your name is Jan van Leyden, and at 18, you're already weary of tending to dairy. Every morning is the same, milking cows before sunrise, the stench of manure soaking into your clothes, the endless dullness of rural life. Your father and brothers seem satisfied with it, but inside you burns the hunger for something greater. Jan, the cows won't milk themselves, your father shouts from outside. You've heard stories of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, and their voyages to distant exotic lands. Tales of silks, spices, and unimaginable wealth. Men returning home with fortunes large enough to purchase entire farms. At least, that's what people say. Rarely do they speak of the ones who vanish forever. Coming, father, you call, but your thoughts are already far away. For months, you've been quietly preparing your escape to Amsterdam to enlist with the VOC, hiding coins here and there, enough to at least make the trip. Your father would never allow it. He's heard too many tales of boys who sailed away and never came back. But what does he know of adventure? Of life beyond these flat, dull fields? That evening, after feeding the animals and sitting down for a simple meal of dark bread and cheese, you finally speak. Father, I want to join the VOC fleet, you announce, steadier than you feel. Silence fills the table. Your mother's spoon clatters. Your father's face doesn't twist with anger as expected, but something worse, fear. Absolutely not, he says firmly. Do you know how many boys sign those contracts and never return? The ships are floating coffins. That's just talk to keep people away from the riches, you argue. I'll come back with enough gold to clear your debts and more. His eyes narrow. If you leave for the VOC, don't expect a place here when you return, if you return. His words cut deep, but your mind is already set. That night, you pack what little you own, a spare shirt, a knife, the coins you've saved. Before sunrise, you slip away from the only home you've known. The trip to Amsterdam takes 2 days. A rough coach ride past endless farmland, a night at a roadside inn that swallows nearly half your savings. At last, the sprawling city rises on the horizon, church spires clawing at the sky. Amsterdam bombards your senses. The streets heave with more people than you've ever seen. Merchants holler. The smells of spices, fish, and sweat churn in the air. Slowly, you make your way to the harbor, where you've heard the VOC offices lie. You look lost, farm boy, a voice calls. A well-dressed man approaches, his clothes finer than any you've seen. A silk waistcoat, polished boots, a feathered hat. I'm looking for VOC offices, you say. I want to sign as a sailor. His eyes brighten. What fortune! I'm Rick Van Groot, recruiter for the company. He extends his hand. You found the right man. It feels too convenient, but his poise and fine dress inspire trust. What do you know of city life anyway? I can guarantee you a place on one of our best ships, Rick says, dropping his voice as though sharing a secret. Without me, it's nearly impossible now. Too many men, not enough berths. I don't have much money, you admit. He waves it off. Just a small fee, handled as an advance from your wages. I'll provide lodging and food until sailing day. Can't have a company man sleeping in the streets, can we? Before you can hesitate, Hendrik is leading you through Amsterdam's maze of streets, spinning tales of the East Indies. The women there, he says with a wink, throw themselves at Dutch sailors, and the spices, worth more than gold. Men have built mansions off a single voyage. How long would I be gone? You ask. 5 years is standard, he replies. But it flies. You'll return rich. Your stomach tightens at the thought of 5 years, but dreams of wealth smother your doubts. Rick takes you to a plain building, a few blocks from the harbor. This is where recruits stay until departure, safe from those who'd steal your place. The moment you enter, the smell nearly knocks you down. Unwashed bodies, sour beer, and something fouler still. The dim cellar is crowded with men, some gambling, some slumped over mugs of cheap gin. Welcome to your new home, Rick says cheerfully. The ship leaves in 3 weeks. You sign a contract you can barely read and are handed a thin pallet in the corner. That night, staring at the hard floor, you wonder if you've made a terrible choice. But it's too late now. Your father's warning echoes in your mind. The days blur together. The food is foul, watery porridge, stale bread. It'll toughen your stomach for ship rations, Rick insists. Gin, however, flows endlessly, leaving most men in a dull haze. Keeps you boys happy, Hendrik says, always returning with more. One morning, after what feels like weeks underground, you're shaken awake by Hendrik and his associates. Today's the day, lads, he announces. Time to board. But unease coils in your gut. They're giving out even more gin than usual. You sip only a little, determined to keep clear-headed. Listen closely, Rick says, his cheerful mask slipping just a little. When you finally reach the VOC building, Hendrik gives strict instructions. Get inside by any means necessary. Others are competing for the same places. But you said our positions were guaranteed, one man protests. And they are, Hendrik replies smoothly, if you make it through the door. As your group is herded through Amsterdam's streets toward the VOC headquarters, the truth becomes undeniable. Hundreds of men swarm around the building, clawing at windows, scrambling up walls in desperation. Some fling themselves back into the crowd, landing with sickening cracks as bones shatter. Horrified, you ask, what is this? The hiring fair, Hendrik says simply. Now go. The next hours dissolve into madness. Bodies press from all sides as you're shoved toward the entrance. Twice you're nearly crushed under the weight of the mob. When the doors finally swing open, you manage to slip inside, narrowly dodging a man plummeting from a window above. Inside, the grim truth of Hendrik's promises reveals itself. He's a soul seller, a crimper. Men like him gather the desperate, keep them drunk and confined, then sell them to the company for a price. As you're processed and officially enlisted for your 5-year term, you learn Hendrik is paid 150 guilders for delivering you, plus another 50 for your lodging. All of it is deducted from your wages, leaving you with far less than promised. Any protest would only land you back in the streets, so you grit your teeth and endure. 2 days later, you see the ship that will be your new world. The East Indiaman towers over the docks, massive beyond belief, 3 times the size of any structure in your village. Its masts spear into the sky, sails furled like giant wings at rest. Impressive, isn't she, boy? A weathered sailor remarks beside you. The Batavia's pride, bound for the Spice Islands. You can only nod, awe and dread twisting inside you. First voyage? He asks, reading your expression. Yes, you admit. His look mixes pity with amusement. Well then, farm boy, you're in for quite an education. Boarding feels like stepping into another reality. Officers bark orders as sailors rush about, ropes coiling, crates shifting. You're shoved below deck into the crew quarters, just above the cargo hold. The space is dark, low-ceilinged, and foul. No bunks, no hammocks, just the bare deck where men will sleep shoulder to shoulder. What little light filters down through cracks above? This is where we sleep? You ask a fellow recruit. Sleep, eat, and when the storm's too rough, even shit, he replies flatly. Welcome to life at sea. The reek of bodies, tar, and urine already saturates the air, and the ship hasn't even left port. That first night, sprawled on the hard planks, your father's words echo in your head. Perhaps he knew more than you ever gave him credit for. But regrets are useless now. At dawn, the ship's bell tolls, anchors are hauled, sails unfurl, and the Batavia's pride drifts from Amsterdam. As the city shrinks behind you, you grip the rail, watching your old life vanish into the horizon. An older sailor sidles up. Second thoughts already? No, you lie. He chuckles, a humorless sound. You will. The North Sea greets you with heaving swells. By nightfall, you and most other green hands are doubled over in misery, vomiting into buckets as hardened sailors stride past with practiced indifference. You'll get your sea legs, one tells you, or you'll die. Either way, the puking stops eventually. As the ship enters the English Channel, reality sinks in. The adventure you dreamed of has dissolved, replaced by relentless hardship. Meals are barely food, salted meat tough as leather, hardtack alive with weevils, beer that tastes more like seawater than ale. Work is endless, hauling lines, scrubbing decks, patching sails. The coarse ropes tear open your hands, leaving raw blisters over old farm calluses. Your back screams from crouching in the low quarters. Officers answer mistakes with curses or lashes. At night, sore and bruised, you lie awake, wondering if you'll survive long enough to reach the paradise Hendrik promised. And if you do, will it be anything like the fantasy that drove you from home? During a brief respite, an older sailor named Peter, who survived 3 voyages, sits beside you, flask in hand. I see that look, he says, offering it. You're wondering if you made the biggest mistake of your life. You drink deeply. Haven't I? He shrugs. Maybe, but you're here now. Wishing won't change it. Best learn quick if you want to live. What should I know? You ask desperately. Peter leans in. First, officers aren't friends, but they're not enemies either. They just want the ship running. Second, find a skill. Cooking, sewing, carpentry. Specialists are useful. Third, he taps his temple. Keep your mind. The sea claims sanity before it claims bodies. As the ship cuts into the Atlantic, you heed his advice. You volunteer to help the carpenters, clumsy but willing. Will, the head carpenter, gruff but fair, grunts approval. At least you know one end of a hammer from the other. Better than most idiots here. Even the smallest recognition feels like a victory in this floating prison. 3 weeks in, the first death comes. A boy your age succumbs to fever in the quarters. His body, wrapped in canvas and weighted with cannon shot, is given to the sea. Remember your comrade, the captain intones as the shrouded form vanishes beneath the waves. And remember, the company rewards those who endure. You can't help but wonder how many more will join him before the East Indies and whether you'll be among them. The ceremony ends, the silence breaks, and work resumes as though nothing happened. Life at sea pauses for nothing, not even death. You begin to learn the rhythm of this wooden world. The ship's bell divides time into watches, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. In truth, emergencies or tricky maneuvers often shatter the pattern, leaving sleep in tatters. Get used to it. Peter tells you, rubbing his red eyes. I've not slept 3 hours straight in 15 years at sea. The bell rules everything. 8 bells and a watch ends. Then the count begins again. Even your dreams are marked by the rhythm. 1 bell, 2 bells, 3 bells. You're stuck with the morning watch, 4 to 8 a.m., and the first dog watch, 4 to 6 p.m. The worst of both worlds, coldest dark before dawn and the blazing heat of afternoon. Could be worse. Well, the carpenter mutters when you complain. Try the midnight to 4 watch, then tell me about suffering. Life aboard Batavia's Pride settles into grim monotony. The bosun's whistle yanks you from sleep. Breakfast is shoveled down, then labor until you're spent. Hauling ropes, pumping bilge water, mending sails. Your hands form calluses upon calluses. Your back feels bent permanently. Food only decays further with time. Breakfast is gray slop, porridge riddled with hard little lumps that crunch in your teeth. Don't look too close, Cornelis, an old sailor, advises when you discover something beetle-shaped in your bowl. Just swallow quick and be glad for the protein. Dinner brings salt pork or beef, briny enough to split lips, served with peas or beans the color of ashes. The meat often slick with green slime, ignored by everyone. This can't be for humans, you mutter, sawing at it with your knife. It isn't. Cornelis laughs. That's why they give it to sailors. Supper is worse. Leftovers from both meals tossed together into a vile stew. The only relief is the daily ration of watered brandy, dulling hunger and pain. Drinking water, stored in wooden casks, rots quickly. After weeks, it's thick with algae and crawling with tiny worms. Officers drink fresh longer, but for you, each mouthful means straining grit between your teeth. Don't think on it, Peter advises as you gag. Pretend it's beer from back home. Home. The word stabs at you. The farm you once longed to escape now feels like heaven compared to this drifting hell. Below deck, the crew quarters are sinking into filth and stench beyond description. Packed shoulder to shoulder with more than 100 men in a space meant for half, the air feels like something you could chew. Sweat, unwashed clothes, and the sour stench of vomit from seasick sailors merge into a foul cloud that never clears. Breathe through your mouth, advises Martin, a sailor. After a few months, you stop noticing. That's not reassuring, you mutter. He shrugs. Wasn't meant to be. Sleep offers no escape. The hard deck beneath your thin mat leaves your shoulders and hips bruised. Rats skitter across your body in the dark. The snoring, coughing, and gagging of your shipmates fill every moment. One morning you wake to a rat perched on your chest, calmly chewing your sleeve. You swat it off with a curse. Made a friend, Cornelius jokes from nearby. Better company than some, you shoot back, drawing a rare laugh from the old sailor. But worse than rats or filth is the utter absence of privacy. Everything is done in front of others. The ship's toilets, just crude holes over the bow, leave you exposed to both the weather and prying eyes. During storms, men resort to buckets in the quarters, making the stench unbearable. You'll get used to it, everyone repeats, and you're beginning to despise the phrase. 2 months in, the ship drifts into the doldrums near the equator. The sails sag in the still air, and progress slows to a crawl. The sun is merciless, hotter than anything you knew in the Netherlands. Sweat drenches your clothes and never dries. Tar bubbles between the planks. Metal burns to the touch. Welcome to hell's front porch, Peter mutters, wiping his face. And this isn't even the worst. Below deck, life becomes unlivable. The air is so thick candles sputter. Men gasp like fish, some breaking rules to sleep on deck. One sailor caught mutters, "I'd take a flogging over another night down there." The boatswain obliges. 20 lashes leave his back a raw lattice of bloody welts, salted cruelly by the surgeon. Discipline doesn't rest, the boatswain warns the crew. That night, despite the lesson, you crave air so badly you sneak to the deck. The sky stuns you, an endless sea of stars mirrored in the glassy water. For a heartbeat, misery fades. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice says. You jump. It's Dr. Rick Johns, the thin, distant ship surgeon. Don't worry, he adds, reading your fear. I won't report you. I come up here most nights. He gestures upward. Better than breathing soup below. His tone shifts suddenly, professional. Been well? No fever? Bowels normal? I'm fine, you lie, though your gums ache when you chew hard biscuit and unexplained bruises bloom on your skin. He frowns but only says, come see me early if it worsens. At dawn you slip back unnoticed. The next day disaster strikes. Adrian, an older sailor with years at sea, collapses hauling a line. His shipmates drag him to the sick bay, a cramped corner reserved for the ill. You bring him water later and recoil at the sight, swollen face, bleeding gums, skin blotched with dark bruises. What's wrong, you ask. Dr. Jans presses a spatula into the man's mouth. Scurvy, he says flatly, the sailor's curse, too long without fresh food. Can he recover, you press. The doctor meets your gaze. That not without fruit or vegetables, and we're in the middle of the ocean. 3 days later, Adrian dies, his body so broken he's barely recognizable. Like the sailor before him, he's wrapped in a worn sail and consigned to the sea. This time, you help with the grim task of preparing the body, a memory certain to haunt your sleep. His teeth fell out while I stitched the shroud, Martin whispers. The helper tossed them into the canvas like stones, the reek unbearable. Fear spreads through the crew. Each man examines himself, bleeding gums, strange bruises, swollen joints. You keep pressing your own teeth, dreading they might loosen. It's not just scurvy, Peter tells you quietly. There's dysentery, typhus, malaria. Once we reach the tropics, the company reckons 1/3 of us will be gone before Batavia. That's the cost of trade. 1/3? The number shakes you. If luck holds, he adds, some voyages lose half. With that grim truth, the days crawl on. Water dwindles to nothing. Rations shrink, then shrink again. Men fight over the last foul drops at the bottom of the barrel. The officers struggle to keep order. They'll start dying like flies soon, Cornelius mutters, watching 2 men brawl over rancid water. Then the rest of us will have more. Nature balances itself. His coldness stuns you, but slowly you begin to understand. At sea, mercy is a weakness. Survival demands cruelty. Relief arrives one sweltering afternoon. Clouds build fast, darkening the horizon. The captain shouts for all hands. Every container is hauled on deck. Barrels, buckets, even sails spread wide to catch the rain. When it comes, it's a torrent. Water lashes down in sheets. Men strip bare, laughing, drinking straight from the sky. You join them, the cool rain on your skin, the sweetest sensation you've ever known. God's mercy, someone cries above the storm. The rain brings more than water. It brings wind. Blessed wind that drives the ship free of the doldrums. The officers let the revelry go unchecked, knowing the crew needs it. That night, with full barrels and sails taut, spirits rise. Below decks men sing, gamble, tell stories of home. For the first time in weeks, hope stirs in your chest. We might make it yet, you tell Peter. He eyes you, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Tougher than you look, farm boy. Maybe you will. But the respite is short. Sailing south, the heat grows savage, bringing swarms of insects that descend even hundreds of miles from land. They infest food, water, bedding, everything. Extra protein. Willem jokes, plucking beetles from his porridge. Food worsens by the day. Salted meat rots. Ship's biscuit turns rock hard, crawling with weevils that even boiling water can't kill. Don't look, just eat, becomes your mantra. Disease spreads like fire. Scurvy eats at the men. Dysentery leaves them staggering to the heads, too weak to stand. The sick bay spills over, the dying forced to lie among the living. One night you wake beside a corpse, eyes fixed on the ceiling, mouth twisted in pain. You call for help. The body is dragged away, another sailor immediately filling the empty space. Life aboard goes on, indifferent. You throw yourself into work, volunteering in the carpenter's shop, where the air is fresher and the company quieter. Willem notices, teaching you the basics of repair. Pay attention, he growls, showing you how to splice rope. Might save your miserable life one day. Though the conditions are harsh, you find yourself adapting. Your sea legs are sure now, allowing you to walk the deck in heavy swells without faltering. Calloused hands and hardened muscles mark your progress, and you begin to grasp the ship's intricate language, the countless names for ropes, sails, and fittings. One day, Cornelius notes approvingly as you climb the ratlines to furl a sail, still green as grass, but not useless anymore. From him, that is high praise. 3 months into the voyage, the first great storm strikes. Black clouds sweep across the horizon with alarming speed, and the captain orders the sails reduced and the ship prepared for the onslaught. Rain lashes the deck in sheets, driven sideways by shrieking wind. Towering waves hurl the ship upward before plunging it into deep troughs that seem ready to consume it whole. Below, chaos reigns. Men retch violently. Belongings are flung about like weapons, and water seeps through the deck to soak bedding and clothes. The ship groans and creaks as if alive and suffering. She'll hold, Peter insists, as another monstrous wave smashes over the deck, though his words do little to calm your dread. You are summoned on deck to help secure a loose sail. Clinging to the yardarm, rain and wind pummel your body as the ship pitches beneath you. One moment the deck lies far below, the next the sky looms above. "Don't look down," Will shouts, steady beside you. "Focus on the sail." With numb fingers, you manage to lash the thrashing canvas. By the time you climb down, you are frozen, drenched, and trembling with fear, but also strangely exhilarated. You stare death in the face and lived. The storm leaves devastation in its wake. 2 sailors are lost to the sea, a third crippled by a rolling cannon. The ship suffers torn sails, broken spars, and a sprung leak that demands constant pumping. Repairs become the order of the day, and you labor alongside Willem and his men, patching and mending. The work leaves little time to mourn the missing, though their absence is keenly felt. "The sea takes what it wants," Willem remarks when he catches you staring at an empty berth. "Best be glad it wasn't you." 4 months into the journey, the captain announces a stop at the Cape of Good Hope, the company's station in southern Africa. The news electrifies the crew. Fresh food, clean water, and land at last. "Don't get carried away," Peter cautions. "They'll keep us just long enough to mend and restock." "Even a single day ashore will be paradise," you reply. The jagged coast of Africa rises before you, towering cliffs and mountains after months of endless sea. The ship anchors in Table Bay beneath the looming flat top of Table Mountain. Officials and pilots board, resupplies arranged, and shore leave granted in tightly controlled shifts to deter desertion. When your turn comes, excitement nearly overwhelms you. The small boat delivers you to a pier, and for the first time in 4 months you step onto unmoving earth. Your legs, tuned to constant motion, betray you, sending you staggering until an older sailor chuckles, Sea legs. You'll find your land legs soon enough. The VOC fort dominates the settlement, its white walls stark against the landscape. Warehouses, taverns, and shops bustle with activity, while native huts smolder with cooking fires in the distance. 4 hours, the officer warns. Miss it and you're left behind. Deserters will hang. You have no desire to desert. Despite the hardships, you are resolved to see the voyage through. You waste no time in a tavern, spending precious coin on fresh bread, tender meat, and crisp vegetables. I'd forgotten food could taste like this, you mutter between mouthfuls. Enjoy it while you can, Cornelius replies dryly. Tomorrow, it's back to weevils and salt. Later, you wander the streets, marveling at the sights and sounds of land life, and purchase a small wooden carving from a native trader, a trinket to remind you the world is wider than the planks of your ship. All too soon, your 4 hours vanish. You return to the boat, gazing back at the shore with longing as you are rowed to the Batavia's pride. Tomorrow you will be at sea again, but for now you cling to the memory of earth beneath your feet and fresh food on your tongue. Once underway, the confinement feels sharper, though the ship is stocked with provisions and water. For the first time in months, the food is free of rot and insects. Eat while you can, Cornelius advises as you eye a plate of real vegetables. Fresh goes to the officers first. In 2 weeks, we'll be gnawing leather again. He is right. The hierarchy of the ship is clearest in the galley. Still, you relish each bite. At the Cape, the sickest were left behind, new men boarded, and the ship repaired. With fresh crew, sound timbers, and renewed stores, the Batavia's pride sets eastward into the Indian Ocean. Spirits rise as each day brings the Indies closer. But Peter tempers your optimism. Don't relax. The Indian Ocean kills as surely as the Atlantic. 2 weeks later, his warning proves true. The ship meets the roaring 40s, fierce westerlies that speed you east but drive monstrous waves. For days, solid walls of sea crash across the deck. Every sailor must tether himself by rope or risk being swept away. Below, the din of waves battering the hull drowns out thought. Sleep is rare, stolen in snatches between the worst rolls. Even Cornelius, pale and queasy, mutters bravely, "This is nothing. I once crossed in a storm so fierce we lost our main mast." That was true sailing. The rolling seas brought another wave of sickness. Even seasoned sailors, long accustomed to the ocean, faltered under the violent motion. Below decks, the stench grew unbearable again, as men too weak to reach the heads vomited where they lay. You were among the fortunate few. Your stomach held steady, allowing you to keep working. The carpenter's mate wasn't so lucky. A brutal throw against a bulkhead had snapped his arm, leaving Willem short-handed. You stepped in, thankful for any excuse to avoid the foul crew quarters. "You've got a knack for this," Willem admitted grudgingly as you helped repair a splintered yardarm. "Might make a proper ship's carpenter one day, if you live that long." From him, that was high praise. After a week of punishing seas, the weather finally eased. The ship drifted into the calmer waters of the subtropical Indian Ocean. But peace brought new misery. The air grew heavy with humidity, leaving clothes, bedding, and even hard biscuit damp and moldy if not eaten immediately. Then came the insects. Tiny creatures seemed to appear from nowhere, infesting food, water barrels, even your hair and clothing. Biting pests left raw welts that festered in the heat. Flies swarmed ceaselessly around the heads and galley. "Welcome to the tropics," Peter muttered, swatting at a mosquito. "If the big things don't kill you, the little ones will." Disease spread again. Scurvy was held at bay by the fresh goods taken at the Cape, but fevers took their place. Men collapsed in delirium, filling the sick bay once more. You too fell ill, spending 3 wretched days tossing between burning fever and bone-rattling chills. Hallucinations plagued you. Your father appeared, shaking his head in disappointment. The ship seemed to sink beneath you, and you swore the rats whispered to you in Dutch. When the fever finally broke, you were so weak you could barely stand. But the ship demanded labor from any man who could walk. Trembling, you returned to duty, helping pump the bilges. "Thought we lost you for a bit," Cornelius said, working beside you. "You were babbling all kinds of nonsense." "What did I say?" you asked, horrified. "Mostly about your father's farm, something about talking rats too." He smirked. "Though I'll never repeat what you said about the captain's daughter." "I've never even seen the captain's daughter." You protested. Seems your fever dreams are more interesting than you are. Cornelius laughed at your dismay. 5 months into the voyage, the Batavia's Pride finally sighted the lush green coast of Sumatra, a vision from another world after endless sea. Strange spicy scents drifted in the air, colorful birds circled overhead, and small fishing boats with curious sails dotted the waters. You gazed longingly at the shore. We're not stopping, Wilm explained. Company rules, straight to Batavia, though we might put in at Bantam if the captain trades some private goods. You had heard of such dealings. Despite the VOC's monopoly, officers and sailors alike profited through private trade. Small luxuries from Europe sold dear in the Indies, while spices and exotic goods returned home at a fortune. Forbidden by rule, it was nonetheless practiced by nearly all. You, with nothing but wages saved, hoped to purchase something in Batavia worth carrying back. The ship skirted Sumatra's coast and entered the Sunda Strait. Islands dotted the waters, some no more than sand and palms, others steep with jungle. Pirates in these waters, Peter said casually as you leaned on the rail beside him. Mostly hit local shipping, but they'll take a European ship if it's weak enough. The word conjured bloody images in your mind, though Peter explained most were local rulers calling themselves kings and admirals. The companies crushed most of them, but there's always another rising. He spat into the sea. Nothing a few cannon shots won't fix. As if to test his words, sails appeared on the horizon, shapes that didn't match any Dutch or European ship. The captain wasted no time. The gunner's crew ran out the cannon. All hands to stations, roared the boatswain. Your pulse thundered as you hauled powder and shot to the gun crews. After storms, starvation, and sickness, now came the most primal terror of all, battle. The distant sails draw nearer, revealing themselves as 3 swift vessels with triangular rigs. When their crews catch sight of the Bavia's Pride, they alter course at once, unwilling to challenge the heavy guns of a Dutch East Indiaman. Within the hour, they vanish back into the tangled archipelago. Told you, Peter remarks once the cannons are secured again. They're after easy prey. We're too large a catch. 2 days later, land breaks the horizon, your first glimpse of Batavia, the VOC's eastern capital. Even from afar, it's an imposing sight. Stone buildings rising behind formidable seawalls, Dutch flags snapping above fortress and council halls. The harbor is packed with ships, vast Indiamen like your own, smaller coastal traders, and a swarm of native craft. Home away from home, Cornelis mutters with uncharacteristic warmth. Been sailing here 20 years. Every time it looks more Dutch. Indeed, as the ship draws closer, the resemblance to the Netherlands is uncanny. Stepped gables, canals carving the city into neat blocks, even a church steeple stabbing upward. Only the lush tropical greenery and the brown-skinned laborers ferrying goods hint that this is half a world away. The Bavia's Pride drops anchor amid the crowded roadstead. In moments, the hull is ringed with smaller boats, company launches bearing clerks and inspectors, local craft hawking fruit, and even skiffs with women calling suggestively to the sailors. Don't waste your coin, Peter warns when he catches your glance. Save it for shore leave. Once the cargo's out, the company gives us 3 days. For a week, you toil from dawn till dusk, unloading boats of wool, glass beads, wine, and luxuries for the colonists. The heat is suffocating, sweat drenching your clothes, but the thought of liberty keeps spirits alight. At last, shore leave comes. The crew is divided, each man granted 24 hours ashore. You're in the second group, which allows you to collect advice from the first. The blue anchor near the fish market, one sailor croaks, his eyes rimmed red. Good food, strong drink, and women who don't bite unless you ask. The company gardens, another suggests, unexpectedly earnest. Plants you've never dreamed of. Armed with their words, you set foot in Batavia. The heat slams into you, thick as a wall. The air swirls with strange scents. Cloves, nutmeg, rotting refuse, smoke from cook fires, and the sour stench of canals doubling as sewers. You drift through the streets in awe, assaulted by the riot of people. Stiff Dutchmen swelter in coats, Javanese women in bright sarongs glide past, Chinese merchants gleam in embroidered silk, Arab traders stride in flowing robes, and even Japanese with their knotted hair move through the crowd. The chatter is a storm of tongues, Dutch, Malay, Chinese, Portuguese, and others you can't name. Following your crewmate's advice, you find the Blue Anchor Tavern. It's alive with noise. Sailors bellowing songs, colonial officials nursing drinks in the shadows, local women plying their trade with laughter and touches. You order food and ale, spending too much, but after months at sea you can't resist. The meal itself is a strange fusion, meat and potatoes laced with spices that make your lips burn and your eyes water. First time in Batavia, asks a grizzled Dutchman at the next table, watching your struggle with amusement. Is it that obvious? You manage between gulps of beer. He chuckles, extending a hand. Johannes Visser, clerk in the company warehouse. He offers his hand. Jan van Leyden, you answer, gripping it. Ordinary seaman on the Batavia's Pride. First voyage. He nods. And how do you find life at sea? Everything you imagined? There's a glint in his eye as if he already knows your response. Not quite, you admit. The crimper who enlisted me skipped a few details. Johannes bursts out laughing. They always do. Let me guess. Promised you women, riches, and adventure, and instead gave you salt, scurvy, and endless toil. Something like that. He signals the barmaid for more beer. Still, you've made it this far. That's more than many manage. The return trip is usually easier, better winds, and now you know what to expect. You spend an hour in his company as he recounts tales of Batavia and the East Indies. He's lived there for 15 years, beginning as a junior clerk from Amsterdam and rising into a respectable role within the company. The real earnings aren't in wages. He confides after a few drinks. They're in private trade. The company turns a blind eye as long as you don't grow too bold or challenge their monopolies. What's worth trading, you ask, thinking of your modest savings? Nutmeg, cloth, perhaps a pouch of pepper. Buy from the locals, not the Chinese brokers. Or silk, if you can afford it. Small, valuable, easy to hide. You thank him and tuck the advice away for later. As night deepens, you continue exploring. The respectable Dutch withdraw to their homes, leaving the streets to sailors, soldiers, and locals. Lanterns shine in windows and along canals, music drifting from taverns. The air remains stifling, even after sunset. On impulse, you head toward the company gardens Johannes mentioned. The gates are open, a few figures strolling the paths. Inside, the sight is astonishing. Leaves larger than your body, blossoms in fantastic shapes and colors, trees heavy with strange fruits. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice says. You turn to see a middle-aged Dutchman in formal black despite the heat. Yes, sir, you answer, aware of your sweat-stained clothes. Peter Overwart, chief gardener, he introduces himself. And you are a sailor, newly arrived? Yes, sir, on the Batavia's Pride. A good voyage? No unusual losses, about a third of the crew, you say, surprised by the question. He nods, as though that's ordinary. We're working to reduce that. These gardens aren't for ornament alone. We're testing plants that may prevent scurvy and other diseases at sea. He guides you along the paths, explaining the uses of different species. You listen closely. Anything to make the next voyage less deadly is worth learning. Indicating a small tree with glossy leaves, he says, its fruit holds the cure for scurvy, but it spoils too quickly for long voyages. Why not carry the living plants, you suggest? He regards you with interest. We've tried, but they fail. Wrong climate, salt air, not enough light below decks. Still, we persist. A church bell tolls, breaking the spell. I should go, you say reluctantly. Need a place to sleep before returning to the ship. Of course, Overwart replies. Try the sailors' hostel by the east gate. Clean enough and the beer's less watered than elsewhere. You thank him and leave. The streets are rougher now. Drunken sailors stagger and sing. Women call from doorways. Once, you press yourself against a wall as company soldiers march past, dragging a sailor caught overstaying his leave. The hostel is as promised, plain but clean, the bed heavenly after months on hard-deck planks. You fall asleep at once, dreaming of exotic plants and spice-laden air. Morning arrives too soon. After a quick meal, you head to the harbor, where the boat awaits to return you to the Batavia's Pride. Your single day of freedom is over. On the way, you stop at a market where locals sell spices in smaller quantities. Recalling Johannes's words, you approach a Javanese woman with a tray of fragrant goods. Nutmeg? You ask in halting Malay. She nods and shows you wrinkled, aromatic nuts. After bargaining through gestures and fragments of words, you buy a small bag of nutmeg and cloves, nearly emptying your savings. If Johannes is right, the profit in Amsterdam will be worth it. At the dock, some shipmates already wait, battered from their night ashore. Good time? Cornelis asks, his bloodshot eyes narrowed, a bruise swelling on his cheek. Quiet, you reply. You? He grins, wincing as it pulls his split lip. Not so quiet. Martin and I ran into some Englishmen, 8 of them, just the 2 of us. Gave better than we got, though. You should see the others. The boat arrives, crewed by men whose turn for shore leave comes next. They eye you with envy. Worth it, one asks, helping you aboard. Every minute, Cornelis answers before you can. Enjoy it while you can. Tomorrow, it's back to salt horse and hardtack. Back on the Batavia's Pride, the ship bustles with activity. Fresh supplies, water, livestock, fruits, vegetables are being loaded for the officer's table. The cargo holds are loaded with spices and luxury goods destined to bring fortunes in Amsterdam: pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, silks, porcelain. When do we sail? You ask Willem, who oversees timber being brought aboard for repairs during the return. 3 days, he replies, once everyone's back and the cargo secured. Sooner if the captain hears of bad winds or political trouble. And trouble is never far in the East Indies. The VOC's monopoly rests on alliances, intimidation, and force against native rulers, rival Europeans, and anyone bold enough to challenge them. The next 3 days are spent readying the ship. Fresh corking is pressed into seams, sails are patched, and the hull is scraped clean of barnacles by locals with knives clenched between their teeth. At last, the anchor is raised, sails unfurled, and the Batavia's Pride begins her long return to Amsterdam. As Java slips into the horizon, you're struck by conflicting emotions: relief to be heading home, dread of danger still ahead, and a sharp pang of regret at leaving a land you barely glimpsed. Second thoughts? Peter asks when he finds you staring back at the coastline. Just thinking, you reply. Happens to everyone their first time. You dream for months about reaching Batavia, and when you finally do, you're off again before you've even caught your breath. Will it be as bad going back? You ask. Different, Peter says. Winds are better, so usually faster. But disease, storms, they're still waiting. And by the end, the food will be as vile as before the Cape. Not comforting, but honest. And honesty has become something you've come to value more than false reassurances. That night, as the ship falls back into the familiar rhythms of the open ocean, you carefully tuck away your small stash of spices in a hidden pocket sewn into your sea chest. They're your only real chance at profit, if you can smuggle them past inspectors in Amsterdam. The ship's sway, once nauseating, now rocks you into uneasy sleep. You've survived the outward voyage, something many cannot claim, but the Indian Ocean and Atlantic still lie ahead, full of unseen dangers. For now, the crew is healthy, the holds are stocked, and the winds are kind. Small blessings, but blessings all the same. At the Cape, life briefly improves. The joy of stepping on land fades quickly once you're confined again, but the difference is clear. The holds brim with fresh water and food. For the first time in months, your meal isn't alive with weevils or green with mold. Eat up, Cornelius tells you as you marvel at fresh vegetables. Won't last long. Officers get theirs first. In 2 weeks, we'll be gnawing leather again. He's right, of course. On a ship, the hierarchy shows most clearly at mealtime. Officers enjoy fresh food long after common sailors are back to hardtack and salt beef. Still, every bite of fresh bread feels like a feast. The Cape also brought repairs and new crew. The sickest were left behind at the VOC hospital, while replacements filled the gaps. The worst leaks were sealed, spars replaced. Though still cramped and foul, the quarters are less crowded. As the Batavia's Pride leaves Table Bay, there's a new sense of purpose among the men. Don't get too comfortable, Peter warns, catching the spark of optimism in your eyes. The Indian Ocean has its own ways of killing men. He's proven right sooner than you'd like. 2 weeks out, the ship enters the roaring 40s, westerly winds that drive her swiftly east, but with towering seas that toss her like a toy. For days, solid walls of green water smash across the deck. Anyone working topside must be tied to a line or risk being washed overboard. Below, the violent motion hurls men and belongings alike. Sleep is nearly impossible, the crash of waves deafening. Even hardened sailors can only snatch uneasy rest. This is nothing, Cornelius boasts, though his green face betrays him. Once crossed in a storm so bad we lost the main mast. Now that was sailing. The rough seas spark another wave of sickness. Even seasoned men buckle. Below decks, the stench is foul as the ill vomit where they lie. You're one of the few spared, your stomach steady enough to keep working. When the carpenter's mate breaks his arm after being slammed into a bulkhead, Willem is left short-handed. You step in gladly, grateful to escape the reeking bunks. You've got a knack for this, Willem mutters as you help mend a splintered yard. Might make a ship's carpenter one day, if you live long enough. From him, that's high praise. After a week of punishing seas, the weather finally begins to ease. The ship enters the calmer waters of the subtropical Indian Ocean. The air turns warmer and heavy with humidity, leaving everything damp. Clothes, bedding, even the ship's biscuits, which quickly mold if not eaten right away. A new enemy emerges. Tiny insects that appear out of nowhere. They infest the food, creep into water barrels, and even burrow into clothing and hair. Mosquitoes leave swollen, infected bites, while flies swarm constantly around heads and food. Welcome to the tropics, Peter mutters, slapping at a mosquito on his neck. If the big things don't kill you, the little ones will. Disease keeps stalking the crew. Fresh supplies from the Cape hold scurvy at bay for now, but other illnesses take hold. A fever spreads through the men, leaving them weak and raving. The sick bay fills again. You fall ill too, enduring 3 dreadful days of burning heat and bone-shaking chills. Hallucinations torment you. You see your father frowning in disappointment, believe the ship is sinking, even hear rats speaking Dutch. When the fever finally breaks, you're so frail you can barely stand. Still, the next day you're forced back to work, legs trembling as you help pump water from the ship. Thought we'd lost you there for a while, Cornelis says, working beside you. You were rambling all kinds of nonsense. What did I say? You ask, mortified. Mostly about your father's farm, and something about talking rats. He grins wickedly. Though I'll never repeat what you said about the captain's daughter. I've never even seen the captain's daughter, you protest. Seems your fever dreams have quite the imagination. Cornelis bursts out laughing at your embarrassment. 5 months into the voyage, the Batavia's pride reaches the islands of the East Indies. The first sight of Sumatra's lush green coast feels unreal after so long at sea. The air carries exotic spicy scents. Bright birds wheel overhead. Fishing boats with strange sails dot the waters. We're not stopping here, Willem explains when he notices you staring at the shore. Straight to Batavia. Might put in at Bantam if the captain wants to trade private goods. You've heard of this before. Despite the VOC's strict monopoly, nearly everyone, from captains to sailors, trades privately on the side. Trinkets from Europe fetch fortunes in the East Indies, while local goods bring profits back home. It's technically against the rules, but enforcement depends on the officer. You, with only a few coins saved, hope to buy something in Batavia to resell on the return journey. The ship skirts Sumatra's coast and crosses the Sunda Strait. Small islands appear, some mere sandbars with palms, others steep jungled slopes. Pirates here, Peter remarks as you both watch an island drift past. Mostly after local ships, but they'll take a European one if it's weak. The word stirs grim images of cutlasses and blood. Peter shakes his head. Local princes, really. Call themselves admirals and kings. The company's beaten most down, but another always rises. Nothing a few cannon shots can't handle. As if on cue, the gunners run out the cannons. The captain has spotted sails on the horizon, not European. All hands are called to stations. Your chest pounds as you rush powder and shot to the guns. Storms, disease, starvation, you face them all, but now the threat of battle brings new terror. The sails draw nearer, 3 fast ships with triangular sails. They shift course when they recognize the Batavia's pride, far too powerful for them. Within an hour, they vanish back into the maze of islands. Told you. Peter says when the guns are stowed, we're too big a fish. 2 days later, Batavia itself comes into view. Even from a distance, it awes you. Stone buildings rise behind massive seawalls. Dutch flags wave from the fortress. Ships crowd the harbor, huge East Indiamen like your own, smaller coastal craft, and countless native boats. Home away from home, Cornelis says with rare sentiment. Been coming here 20 years. Looks more Dutch every time. As the ship approaches, You notice familiar architecture, stepped gables, canals dividing neat districts, a church steeple rising high. Only the tropical greenery and dark-skinned laborers remind you this is far from the Netherlands. The Batavia's pride anchors in the packed harbor. Small boats swarm aboard, company officials, traders with fresh fruit, even women calling to the sailors. Don't waste your coin, Peter warns, catching your glance. Save it for shore leave. 3 days once the cargo's unloaded. Then you'll see what Batavia really has to offer. For the next week, you and the crew labor from sunrise to sunset, unloading the ship's European cargo, woolen cloth, glass beads, wine, and fine goods destined for the colonial elite. The work is punishing in the tropical heat, but the prospect of shore leave keeps morale afloat. At last, the long-anticipated day comes. The men are split into 3 groups, each granted 24 hours of freedom in the city. You are placed in the second group, which allows you to seek advice from the first upon their return. The blue anchor near the fish market, one sailor recommends, eyes red from exhaustion and drink, good food, strong ale, and friendly girls. The company gardens, says another unexpectedly. You won't believe what they're growing there. With these tips in mind, you step into Batavia. The heat slams into you like a wall compared to the relative coolness of the harbor. The air is thick with scents, spices, rotting vegetation, cooking fires, and the ever-present reek of canals doubling as open sewers. You drift through the streets, staring like the provincial newcomer you are. The mix of people astounds you. Dutch colonists sweltering in European attire, Javanese in colorful wraps, Chinese merchants in silk, Arab traders in flowing robes, even Japanese with their distinctive top knots. Around you swirls a chorus of languages, Dutch, Malay, Chinese, Portuguese, and more you cannot place. Following your shipmate's advice, you find the Blue Anchor Tavern near the fish market. Inside, the crowd is thick with sailors from every port, colonial officials dodging their families for a few hours, and local women intent on parting men from their coin. You order food and a mug of beer, spending more than you should, but unable to resist after months of shipboard fare. The meal is a curious mix. Familiar meat and potatoes, yet spiced so fiercely that your eyes water and your nose burns. First time in Batavia? Asks a weathered Dutchman at the next table, grinning at your struggle with the fiery food. Is it that obvious? You reply, chasing the heat with a gulp of beer. He laughs. Written all over your face, boy. Johannes Vissa, clerk in the company warehouse. He extends his hand. Jan Van Litten, you answer, shaking it. Ordinary seaman on the Batavia's Pride. First voyage? You nod. And how do you find the seafaring life? He asks, his eyes already betraying the answer he expects. Not exactly what I dreamed of, you admit. The crimper who signed me left out a few details. Johannes roars with laughter. They always do. Promised exotic women, easy riches, and adventure, didn't he? And instead gave you salt pork, scurvy, and back-breaking labor. Something like that, you say with a wry smile. He waves for more beer. Well, you've made it this far. More than many can say. The return voyage is usually easier, better winds, and you know what to expect now. You spend an hour with him, listening to tales of Batavia and the Indies. Johannes has been in the colony 15 years, beginning as a junior clerk straight from Amsterdam and climbing steadily up the company's ranks. After enough drink loosens his tongue, he leans closer. The real money isn't in wages. It's in private trade. The company doesn't care, as long as you don't get greedy or interfere with their monopolies. What's worth trading, you ask, thinking of the meager savings you've tucked away. Nutmeg, cloves, pepper, small parcels, silk if you can afford it, high value, easy to hide. Always buy from the local traders, not the Chinese middlemen. You thank him, tucking the advice away for later. As night falls, you wander on. Respectable Dutch families retreat behind shutters, leaving the streets to sailors, soldiers, and locals. Lanterns glimmer along the canals, music drifts from taverns and houses, and the heat lingers, suffocating even after sunset. On a whim, you head for the company gardens Johannes mentioned. The gates stand open, and a few people stroll the paths despite the hour. The garden overwhelms you. Giant leaves larger than your body, blossoms of unnatural colors and shapes, trees burdened with strange fruit. Beautiful, isn't it? Comes a voice. You turn to find a middle-aged Dutchman in stiff black clothing despite the heat. Yes, sir, you answer, suddenly aware of your sweat-stained sailor's garb. Peter Overwater, chief gardener, he introduces himself. And you're newly arrived, I see. Yes, sir. Batavia's pride. Good voyage? No unusual losses? About a third of the crew, sir, you admit, startled by the bluntness of the question. He nods as though it's routine. We're trying to reduce that. These gardens aren't for show alone. We test plants that might prevent scurvy and other shipboard diseases. He guides you along the paths, pointing out specimens and describing their properties. You listen closely. Anything that might make the return journey less deadly is worth knowing. At one small tree with glossy leaves, he pauses. This fruit is rich in what prevents scurvy. We hope to cultivate it for ship provisions, but it spoils too quickly. Why not carry the living plants, you suggest? Overwater studies you with new interest. A thoughtful question. We've tried, but the salt air, poor light, and shifting climate kill them before they reach Europe. Still, we persist. The tolling of the city's main church interrupts your talk. I should go, you say reluctantly. Need to find a place to sleep before returning to the ship tomorrow. Try the sailors' hostel by the east gate, Overwater advises. Clean enough, and they don't water the beer as much as others. You thank him and make your way through streets grown rowdy with the night. Drunken sailors stagger and sing. Women call from doorways. And once you press yourself against a wall, as a company patrol drags off a sailor who overstayed his leave. The hostel is just as described, plain but tidy, with beds that feel like luxury after endless nights on the hard planks of the deck. You fall asleep almost immediately, your dreams filled with visions of strange plants and spice-laden air. Morning comes too soon. You rise, eat a quick breakfast, and make your way back to the harbor where the ship's boat waits to return you to the Batavia's pride. Your 24 hours of freedom have vanished in a blur. On the way, you pause at a small market where local traders sell spices in quantities far smaller than the company's bulk purchases. Remembering Johannes's advice, you approach a Javanese woman balancing a tray of aromatic goods. Nutmeg? You ask, using one of the few Malay words you've learned. She nods and shows you several wrinkled brown nuts, their fragrance sharp, even dried. With much gesturing and halting words, you manage to negotiate a price, finally walking away with a small cloth bag of nutmeg and cloves, nearly all your wages gone. If Johannes was right, you might see a tidy profit in Amsterdam. At the dock, several of your shipmates are already waiting, looking worse for wear after their shore leave. Good time? Cornelius asks, his eyes bloodshot, a bruise spreading across his cheek. Quiet, you reply. You? He grins, wincing as the split in his lip pulls. Not so quiet. Got into it with some English sailors over whose beer is better, Dutch or English. Wouldn't have been so bad if there weren't 8 of them. And how many of you? Just me and Martin, but we gave as good as we got. You should see the other lot. The boat arrives, rowed by sailors of the 3rd group who will take their leave once everyone else is back aboard. They eye you with envy despite your ragged state. Worth it? One asks as he pulls you aboard. Every minute, Cornelius answers for you. Enjoy it while you can. Tomorrow it's back to salt horse and hardtack. Back on the Batavia's pride, the ship bustles with activity. Provisions are loaded. Water, livestock, fruit, and vegetables for the officer's table. The cargo hold fills with pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, silks, porcelain, luxuries destined for Amsterdam's markets. When do we sail? You ask Willem, who oversees the loading of timber for repairs. 3 days, he says. Once everyone's aboard and the cargo's secured. Maybe sooner if the captain hears of bad winds or trouble. Trouble is never far in the Indies. The VOC maintains its monopoly through shifting alliances, threats, and outright violence against native rulers, rival Europeans, anyone in their way. For the next 3 days, you join the crew in preparations. Fresh caulking seals the seams, sails are mended, local divers scrape barnacles from the hull with knives clenched between their teeth. At last, the anchor is raised, sails unfurled, and Batavia's pride begins the long journey home. As Java fades into the horizon, you stand at the rail, torn between relief, dread, and a strange longing for the place you barely had time to know. Second thoughts? Peter asks, joining you. Just thinking, you answer. He nods. Happens to everyone their first time. You dream of Batavia for months. When you finally get there, you hardly see it before sailing away again. Will the return be as bad, you ask? Different, he says. The winds are better, usually quicker. But disease, storms, hunger, they're still with us. By the time we near home, the food will be just as foul as it was on the way out. Not comforting, but at least it's honest. You've learned to value honesty over false promises. That night, as the ship settles into its rhythm, you hide your small bag of spices in a secret pocket sewn into your sea chest. It's your only chance of turning this voyage into profit, if you can keep it safe and smuggle it past the inspectors in Amsterdam. The familiar hard planks no longer feel unbearable. The ship's sway now lulls you to sleep. You've survived the outward journey, something many of your shipmates could not. But the Indian Ocean and Atlantic lie ahead, with all their perils. For now, though, the crew is healthy, the stores are full, and the winds are with you. Small comforts, but comforts all the same. The Tavern Cornelius drags you to sit 3 streets inland, far from the worst of the dockside chaos, but still thick with sailors. The low-ceilinged room smells of beer, smoke, and sweat, like the ship, yet more welcoming without the constant threat of death. You sit at a battered wooden table, and Cornelius signals the barmaid. Soon, 2 mugs of dark beer foam over the rims. To survival, Cornelius toasts, and to those who didn't make it. You clink mugs and drink. The beer tastes impossibly good after months of sour water and weak grog. For a while, neither of you speak, simply enjoying the solid ground beneath your feet. So, Cornelius says at last, wiping foam from his mouth, what's your plan, farm boy? Besides getting drunk, which every sailor does first thing back from a voyage? You hesitate. The truth is, beyond selling your contraband spices and perhaps returning to your father's farm, you have no plan. Need to find a buyer first, you admit cautiously, lowering your voice. Cornelius nods. I know someone. Fair broker, won't give you full market value, but he won't cheat you either, and he doesn't inform the company. I'll take you tomorrow. Tonight, though, we drink and we sleep in a real bed for once. Across the street, the lodging house offers clean, if costly, rooms. After a few more mugs, you rent one. The bed, though narrow and lumpy, feels like pure luxury after the ship's planks. Exhausted, you collapse into it fully clothed and sleep deeper than you have in months. Morning brings a pounding head and confusion. The room doesn't sway, the noises are wrong, street vendors instead of creaking timbers and snores. For a moment, you don't know where you are. Then it all returns. Amsterdam. The voyage is over. Freedom. You wash your face, straighten your clothes, and head downstairs. Cornelius is already in the tavern, looking irritatingly unaffected by last night's drinking. Thought you'd sleep all day, he grins. Come on, let's get some food in you. After almost instantly falling asleep, your dreams swirl with visions of strange plants and air heavy with spices. Morning arrives too quickly. You wake, eat a rushed breakfast, and head back toward the harbor, where the ship's boat waits to return you to the Batavia's pride. Your 24 hours of freedom have vanished in the blink of an eye. On the way, you pause at a small market where local traders sell spices in modest amounts, far less than the company's massive shipments. Remembering Johannes's advice, you approach a Javanese woman carrying a tray of aromatic goods. Nutmeg? You ask in halting Malay. She nods, revealing small, wrinkled nuts that release a rich fragrance even dried. With gestures and broken words, you manage to bargain for a cloth bag of nutmeg and cloves, spending nearly all your wages. If Hannes is right, they'll bring a fine profit back in Amsterdam. At the dock, several of your shipmates are already waiting, most looking far worse for wear after their night ashore. Good time? Cornelius asks, his eyes bloodshot, a bruise darkening his cheek. Quiet, you answer. You? He grins, wincing as it stretches his split lip. Not so quiet. Got in a debate with some English sailors, Dutch beer versus English ale. Wouldn't have been so bad if there hadn't been 8 of them. And you were how many? Just me and Martin. But we gave better than we got. You should see the other fellows. His grin widens despite the pain. The boat arrives, rowed by the 3rd group of sailors, who will have their shore leave next. They eye your group enviously. Worth it? One asks, hauling you aboard. Every minute, Cornelius replies before you can answer. Enjoy it while you can. Back to Salt Horse and hardtack tomorrow. Back on the Batavia's Pride, the ship buzzes with activity. Fresh supplies are loaded: water, livestock, fruits, vegetables for the officers' table. The holds steadily fill with the riches of the East: pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, silk, porcelain. When do we sail? You ask Willem, overseeing timber for repairs. 3 days, he replies. Once everyone's aboard and the cargo's secure. Sooner if the captain hears of bad winds or trouble brewing. Trouble, you know, is never far in the Indies, where the VOC's grip depends on shifting alliances, intimidation, and open force against local rulers and rival Europeans alike. For the next 3 days, you work with the crew to ready the ship. Seams are caulked, sails patched, and the hull scraped clean by local divers who vanish beneath the water with knives between their teeth. Finally, the anchor is raised, sails unfurled, and the Batavia's Pride begins her long return to Amsterdam. Watching Java fade into the horizon, you feel a tangle of emotions. Relief at leaving, dread for the perils ahead, and a pang of longing for a land you barely glimpsed. Second thoughts? Peter asks quietly, joining you at the rail. Just thinking, you reply. He nods. Happens to everyone their first time. You dream of reaching Batavia for months, then barely see it before you're hauled away again. Will the return be as bad? You ask. He considers. Different. Winds are kinder, so usually faster. But disease, storms, the same dangers linger. And by the time we near home, the food will be as foul as before the Cape. Not comforting, but honest. And honesty has grown more precious to you than empty reassurances. That night, as the ship finds its rhythm again, you tuck your secret bag of spices into a hidden pocket sewn into your chest. It's your one hope for profit if you can smuggle it past inspectors in Amsterdam. Settling onto the hard planks, the familiar sway feels oddly soothing now. You drift off, wondering what trials the homeward seas still hold. Many of your original shipmates never survived the outward passage, and the Indian and Atlantic Oceans lie ahead with all their dangers. For now, though, the ship is sound, the crew healthy, the wind steady, small mercies, but ones you've learned to cherish. The tavern Cornelius leads you to sits 3 streets from the harbor, far enough to dodge the rowdiest crowds, but still thick with sailors. The low-ceilinged room reeks of beer, smoke, and sweat, not unlike the ship, but warmer, safer, free of constant peril. You sit at a battered table as Cornelius waves down a barmaid. Soon, 2 mugs of dark beer arrive, frothing over the rims. To survival, Cornelius says, raising his mug, and to those who didn't make it. You clink mugs. The first swallow floods you with a joy sharper than you expected. Real beer, not stale water or grog. For a moment you drink in silence, savoring the solidity of the ground beneath your feet. Cornelius wipes his mouth. So what's your plan, farm boy? Besides getting properly drunk, which every sailor does first chance after a long voyage. You hesitate. Beyond selling your smuggled spices, you've no plan. Need to find a buyer first, you say low, cautious despite the noise. He nods knowingly. Almost everyone carries contraband. I know a broker, honest for his kind, won't pay top price, but better than most, and he won't betray you to the company. I'll take you tomorrow. Tonight's for beer and a real bed. He's right. The lodging house across the street offers small, clean rooms. Not cheap, but better than a sailor's flop. After a few more mugs, you rent one. The bed, narrow and lumpy, feels like a king's after the ship's planks. Too tired to undress, you collapse boots and all into the deepest sleep you've had in months. Morning brings a pounding head and confusion. The room doesn't sway, the sounds are wrong, street noise instead of creaking timbers. For a moment, you don't know where you are. Then it returns. Amsterdam. Freedom. The voyage is over. You splash water on your face, straighten your rumpled clothes, and head downstairs. Cornelius is already at the tavern, annoyingly clear-eyed after last night. Thought you'd sleep the day away, he grins. Come on, let's get you fed. You feel strangely idle with nothing to occupy your hands, but watching the shoreline drift by. The voyage to Rotterdam takes only 2 days with the wind in your favor. From there, you secure a place atop a farmer's wagon headed toward your village, paying him a few coins to ride on sacks of grain bound for market. As the familiar countryside of South Holland passes, anxiety creeps in. What if your father turns you away? What if hardship has struck in your absence? What if life simply went on without you, leaving no space for your return. The farmer sets you down at a crossroads a mile from the village. Hoisting your sea chest, you begin the last stretch on foot. Every step brings a flood of memories, childhood games in these fields, swimming in the stream during hot summers, helping with harvest in the meadow. The village looks unchanged, sturdy farmhouses clustered around the church, smoke curling from chimneys and cattle lowing in the distance. A few villagers glance your way, but don't recognize the weathered sailor as the farmer's boy who left more than a year ago. Your family's farm lies just beyond the village, a modest spread of cattle and fields. Cresting a rise, you see the plain farmhouse with smoke drifting from the chimney. Someone is home. Your pace falters as you near the yard. What will you say? How can you explain what you've seen, the way you've changed? Before you decide, the door opens. Your mother steps out, a basket of laundry in her arms. She looks older, more gray, more lines. She hangs a sheet, then turns and spots you. The basket drops. Jan, her voice is a whisper. Hello, Mother. Your own voice sounds foreign, roughened by sea winds and shouted orders. She takes a hesitant step, then another, then runs to you. Her arms wrap tight around you, her scent of bread and herbs filling you with home. My boy, she murmurs through tears. We heard nothing, so many ships lost. You hold her, guilt and relief warring within you. I'm sorry, you manage, the words too small. She pulls back, touches the scar on your face. What happened to you? It's a long story. Let's go inside. Practical as ever, she gathers the basket. Your father's in the back field. The boys are helping with the calf. You duck into the kitchen, unchanged but somehow smaller, scrubbed table, shelves of crockery, herbs hanging from the rafters. She makes tea, asking simple questions about your journey, skirting heavier matters. You're grateful for the reprieve. The door opens. Your father enters, dirt still on his hands, shoulders more stooped than you remember. Behind him crowd your brothers, taller now, and your sister, grown into a young woman. Silence fills the room. You stand slowly. Father, you say, stiff with unease. He studies you. You've come back. Not a question. Yes, the sea didn't want me, though it tried. A hint of sailor's humor escapes you. His expression softens just slightly. You look half-starved, and your face? Portuguese splinter, you answer, touching the scar. Gasps ripple from your siblings. To them, your presence is a living tale of storms, battles, distant lands. Sit, your father says, taking his place. Eat. Then tell us where you've been. Not forgiveness, but a door left open. The meal is simple, bread, cheese, smoked meat. But after months of hard rations, it tastes like a feast. You eat slowly, your family watching. When hunger eases, the questions come. Your brothers eager for stories of storms and fights. Your sister curious about animals and people. Your mother concerned with food, clothes, and survival. Your father listens in silence, weighing your words as you soften horrors and highlight wonders. At last he asks, what will you do now? The question you've dreaded. I thought I might stay if I'm welcome. He holds your gaze. When you left, I said there'd be no place for you if you came back. I was angry and afraid. The stories of the company's boys, his eyes flick to your scar. Seems they weren't exaggerated. No, you admit. His face hardens, then eases with a sigh. The farm needs hands. Your brothers manage, but there's always more work. It's not warm, but it's real. Thank you, you say quietly. You'll start tomorrow. East Field needs clearing for spring planting. And just like that, you're woven back into the life you once fled. That night, you sleep in your old loft bed with your brothers. The straw mattress feels impossibly soft after ship's planks. The stillness is strange, almost unsettling. Your brothers pepper you with questions deep into the night, hungry for adventure to break the monotony of farm life. You answer as best you can, knowing you're nurturing the same restless dreams that once drew you away. Should you warn them more firmly about the truth of life at sea, or is that something each must discover for himself? The next morning, you rise before dawn, a habit etched into you by long watches on deck. The farm's rhythm, milking cows, feeding stock, mending fences, feels both alien and familiar. Your rope-hardened hands quickly learn the weight of hoes and axes, your sea-trained body turning once daunting chores into easy work. Days blur into weeks. Planting, tending, feeding, repairing. Slowly you fold yourself back into the farm's steady cycle. Your father says little, though you sometimes catch him studying you, as though trying to reconcile the man who returned with the boy who left. Your mother fusses constantly, pressing food into your hands, darning your clothes with extra care, rubbing salves into old scars when the damp makes them ache. Your sister listens raptly to tales of far-off ports, while your brothers shift between pride and jealousy, eager to live the adventures you speak of. Still, a restlessness lingers. At night, your dreams take you back to the ship, no longer the misery, but the freedom, the endless horizon, the bond of men who face storms together. By day, you catch yourself watching gulls wheeling overhead, wondering what distant harbors they've seen. Your father notices, of course. He stays silent until one evening, as you sit by the fire repairing a harness strap, his voice cuts the quiet. "You're not staying, are you?" The words catch you off guard, though you've been asking yourself the same question for weeks. "I don't know," you admit. He nods, as though confirming something long understood. "I was wrong to try to bind you here before. A man must walk his own path." His gaze stays on the flames. "But know this, whatever you choose, this will always be your home." The words release a weight you've carried since your return, the fear of being cast out again. Your throat tightens. "Thank you, Father." He nods once, and the matter is closed. Nothing more is spoken, yet a bridge has been laid where once there was only distance. Spring warms into summer. You adapt to the steady pace of farming, even as the nightmares of storms and battles fade, though never vanish entirely. Traders bring news, ships lost to storms, fortunes made in the Indies, battles on distant seas. Each story stirs the restlessness again. One evening, as the sky burns gold in the west, your mother sits beside you. "You're thinking of the sea," she says. Not a question. You don't deny it. "A mother knows," she sighs. "You have the same look your uncle did. My brother, the one who sailed with the herring fleet. This is new to you." "I didn't know." "He died before you were born, lost to a storm off England's coast." She squeezes your hand, roughened like her own. "It broke my heart when you left. I thought I'd never see you again." "I'm sorry." "No," she says firmly. "A bird must fly, a fish must swim, and some men must sail. It's in your blood as it was in his. But promise me, if you go again, come back, even just between voyages. Don't leave us wondering." "I promise," you say and mean it. Summer fades into autumn. The harvest demands all hands, dawn to dusk, a comfort in its certainty. Yet when the fields lie bare and winter's first frosts settle in, the longing rises sharper than before. You count the coins saved from your VOC pay. Enough, perhaps, to see you through in Amsterdam until another ship is found. Not the Indies this time, you think. A shorter voyage, Baltic, maybe the Mediterranean, to test whether the sea still claims you without vanishing for years. The decision comes not as a thunderclap, but slowly, piece by piece. The farm is your anchor, the sea your calling. You will need both. One night, as snow drifts against the shutters, you tell your family. Your mother and sister weep softly. Your brothers barrage you with questions. Your father only nods, unsurprised. "When?" he asks. "In spring," you answer, "after the thaw." "Good, we'll need your hands this winter, and you can teach the boys what you know." His practicality steadies you. This is not an ending, but a widening of your life. Land and sea both, roots and horizons. That night, your dreams are of white sails filled with wind, not of storms or death, but of journeys yet to come. And always behind you the knowledge of home, waiting when the voyages end. Winter sets in, snow blankets the fields, ice edges the streams. Work shifts indoors, tending cattle in the barn, mending harness and tools by the fire. Preserving food, chopping and hauling firewood, the rhythm is as steady as your heartbeat, though now accompanied by the awareness that spring will bring change. Your father works beside you, asking from time to time about your experiences at sea. Not the thrilling tales your brothers would long for, but practical questions, navigation, weather, how to command men in crisis. You begin to realize he is trying to understand the life you've chosen, one so different from his own. One evening, while repairing harnesses together as snow drifts silently outside, he finally asks what's been on his mind since your return. Was it worth it? The suffering, the danger, the men who died, was what you found worth the cost? You pause before answering. Not in the way I imagined. I didn't find treasure or glory. You touched the scar on your face. But I discovered something else. a new way of seeing the world, an understanding of what I can endure, and maybe even a purpose. He nods slowly, his weathered hands never pausing in their work. Some lessons cost dearly, but those are the ones that stay. In that moment, you feel a connection deeper than ever before, not child to father, but man to man, each respecting the path of the other. As winter loosens its hold, the days grow longer, and spring's first signs appear. You prepare to leave once again. This time, there are real goodbyes, promises to return, to write when possible, to carry your family with you wherever the sea calls. On a clear March morning, you shoulder your sea chest, now heavier with shirts sewn by your mother, dried apples from the farm, and a carved wooden horse made by your youngest brother. Your father walks with you to the village crossroads, where a merchant's wagon awaits. Remember your promise, he says firmly. This will always be your home. I'll remember, you reply, and I'll return when I can. He clasps your arm tightly. Man to man. Fair winds, my son. Thank you, father. You climb into the wagon, finding a seat atop sacks of grain. As the horses pull away and the farm recedes behind you, the feeling is different from your first departure. Not desperate excitement, but a steadier anticipation, tempered by the knowledge of what lies ahead. The sea calls, as it always will, but now you leave with their blessing, and with certainty that no matter what storms or distant shores await, there will always be a harbor ready to receive you. The journey to Amsterdam takes 3 days, with stops at villages along the road. You share the ride with a merchant's assistant, a talkative youth on his first trip to the capital. His excitement reminds you of your own naive eagerness before your voyage with the VOC. That feels like another lifetime. Have you been to Amsterdam before? He asks wide-eyed. A few times, you answer, though you do not mention having sailed around half the globe. Some experiences are too vast for those who have not lived them. At last, Amsterdam rises on the horizon, its church spires and windmills emerging through morning mist. The city looks both familiar and new. You know its streets, yet now you approach not as a farm boy seeking adventure, nor a weary sailor longing for home, but something in between, a man shaped by both worlds. At the gates you part ways with the assistant, shouldering your chest and walking toward the harbor. Spring has awakened the port, ships being fitted, cargoes loaded, crews gathered. The sight stirs your blood. Yes, you think, this is right. You lodge at the same hostel you stayed in after your return from the east. The proprietor, a retired sailor, remembers you. Back for another voyage? He asks, leading you to a small but clean room. If I can find the right ship, you answer. He nods knowingly. Spring sailing's just starting, plenty of ships looking for skilled hands. Over the next days, you search among the shipping offices. You're no longer the desperate boy willing to sign anywhere. Experience has made you cautious. You ask about routes, captains, pay, and conditions. Some offices dismiss you at once, seeking only cheap, desperate men. Others grow more interested when you mention your VOC service. One morning at a dockside tavern, you run into Peter. He looks nearly the same, perhaps a little grayer, but with the same steady gaze. Thought you'd gone back to your farm, he says, sliding a chair out for you. I did, you reply,
Peter
sitting
nods.
down.
Smart.
Stayed through winter, but
Get more
the sea
experience
got in your
first.
blood.
He lifts his
He
mug.
finishes with a
As
knowing
it
grin.
happens, told you
I've
it
signed
would.
on to
You
a
can't
merchant
deny it.
vessel.
I'm looking
bound
for a
for
ship.
Stockholm, something shorter than the
Ria
Indies,
Nordstar.
the Baltic, maybe the Mediterranean. The steady rhythm of preserving food, cutting wood, and hauling it felt as natural as your own heartbeat. Yet now it carried the weight of change, for spring promised to shift. Your father worked alongside you, occasionally asking, not about the adventures your brothers dreamed of, but about navigation, weather signs, and how to manage men in crisis. You understood then. He was trying to grasp this life you had chosen, so different from his own. One evening, as you repaired harnesses together with snow drifting softly outside, he finally voiced the question that had lingered since your return. Was it worth it? All the hardship, the danger the men lost, was the cost worth what you found? You considered carefully before answering. No, not in the way you once imagined. There had been no riches, no glory. You touched the scar on your face. But you had found something else, a new way of seeing, the knowledge of your own endurance, that perhaps even a purpose. He nodded slowly, his weathered hands never stopping their work. The dearest lessons are often the ones that matter most. In that moment, the bond between you deepened. Not father to child, but man to man, each respecting the other's chosen path. When winter began to loosen its grip, as the days lengthened and the first signs of spring appeared, preparations for departure were made. This time, there were proper goodbyes, promises to return, to write, to carry them with you, wherever the sea might lead. On a clear March morning, you shouldered your sea chest, now packed with shirts sewn by your mother, dried apples, and a carved wooden horse from your youngest brother. At the crossroads, your father clasped your arm. This is always your home, wherever you sail. Fair winds, my son, you climbed onto the merchant's wagon, carrying grain to market, and as the farm disappeared behind you, you felt not wild exhilaration, but a steadier anticipation, tempered by hard-earned knowledge. The sea still called, but now you left with blessings and the certainty of a harbor that would always await your return. The 3-day wagon journey to Amsterdam carried you through villages where you shared the ride with a merchant's assistant, a young man bursting with excitement on his first trip to the capital. His wonder reminded you of your own naivety before your VOC voyage, a lifetime ago. When he asked if you'd been to Amsterdam before, you simply replied, "A few times," leaving unspoken the truth that you had sailed halfway around the world. Some things were too vast to explain. At last, Amsterdam rose through the morning mist, its spires and windmills both familiar and strange. You entered the city not as a farm boy chasing adventure, nor as a sailor desperate for land, but something between, someone who had lived both lives. At the gates, you parted ways with your fellow traveler, shouldered your chest, and made for the harbor, alive again with spring bustle. Ships were being fitted out, cargoes loaded, crews recruited. The very air seemed to stir your blood. Yes, this was the right path. You found lodging at the same hostel as before. The retired sailor who ran it remembered you. "Back for another voyage?" he asked. "If I can find the right ship," you replied. Experience had taught you discernment. No longer would you sign on to any vessel. You asked about captains, conditions, pay, and routes. Some dismissed you, seeking only cheap hands. Others listened when you mentioned the VOC. Then one morning in a tavern you spotted Peter. He looked almost the same, perhaps a bit grayer, but steady as ever. "Thought you'd gone back to the farm," he said, sliding a mug toward you. "I did," you answered. "Stayed through winter, but—" "The sea got in your blood," he finished. He was right. You admitted as much, adding that you sought something shorter this time, Baltic or Mediterranean routes. Peter nodded. "Smart. Gain more experience before another East Indies run." He raised his mug. "As it happens, I've signed on to a merchant vessel bound for Stockholm, the North Star."